Hi, welcome to my video on the inverse of a square root function, part 1. Number 1, the f of x is equal to the square root of x minus 1. Notice this is a root, and in any root, the square root, the x, or the expression underneath the root, has to be greater than or equal to 0. And the starting point, when x is 0, which is the first number we can start with. We can have a 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. But when x is 0, y is negative 1. So let's graph this function. We start when x is 0, and then we'll do a 1, and then we'll do a 4. And the reason I'll pick those numbers is because when I do the square root of 0, I get a 0 and I get a negative 1. When I do the square root of 1, I get a 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. I pick a 4. Square root of 4 is 2. 2 minus 1 is 1. So what I did, I picked all the numbers that would make this a perfect square, so that the square root would come out to be an integer, or positive integer. Now graph that. So we have x is 0, y is negative 1, right there. We have x is 1, y is 0, x is 1, y is 0. And we have x is 4, y is 1. X is 4, y is 1. It's right there. So if we graph that, it's doing this. So that's the f of x. The domain is x is greater than or equal to 0, and the range starts at a negative 1, and that's a positive, so the range is y is greater than or equal to, because this positive is going up, so it's great, the range values are y is greater than or equal to negative 1. Now let's work out the inverse. So the f of x is equal to the root of x minus 1. Change f of x to a y. Switch the y to an x and an x to a y. Now we solve for y. So x plus 1 equals root y. And now we'll square both sides. So that's x plus 1 all squared. The square root of y squared is just a y. So f to the negative 1 of x is equal to x plus 1 squared. But we have to remember we're doing an inverse, so your domain is the range, so the range y is greater than or equal to 0, and the range is your domain, so your domain is x is greater than or equal to negative 1. The domain is the range is the domain. Remembering domain is always the x, the range is always the y. So greater than or equal to 0 goes right here, greater than or equal to negative 1 goes here. So that means that the domain got to be, even though I worked this out to be the inverse, I have to put in x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Because this parabola has a right side and a left side, so I have to go with the opposite, or the range is your domain. So I pick the right side. Now I'll use a red pen to do its inverse. And the inverse, I can do the inverse in the table of values, so the y's become the x's. So I can do negative 1, 0, 1, and the x's become the y's, 0, 1, 4. So that means that if I graph that, x is negative 1, 0, x is negative 1, 0, which is right here, x is 0, 1, x is 0, y is 1, x is 1, y is 4, x is 1, y is 4. So what we have, there's its inverse, f to the negative 1 of x. And again, to see if this fits the equation that we have. So if we take a negative 1 and plug it in, negative 1 plus 1 is 0, squared is 0. Put a 0 in. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 square root is 1. Put a 1 in. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 square root is 4. So notice we're picking, this is a parabola whose vertex is negative 1, 0. And so we're picking, to the right, we're picking the right side, which is the inverse of this one. So there's the parabola right here, but we're only picking the right side, which is in relation to the square root. It's going up from this starting point. The inverse of a square root function is a parabola. The inverse, if the expression underneath the root is linear. So if this expression underneath the root is a linear, then we will get a parabola, because there are cases when what's underneath this root is not a linear. It could be something else, and it turns out to be not a parabola. So I could say the inverse of a square root function is a square function, but that's not always true. So I had to say the inverse of a square root function is a parabola if the expression underneath this root is linear. X plus 1, x minus 2, etc. Okay, let's do another one. Number 2, f of x equals the negative of x minus 2 plus 4. And again, the x minus 2 has to be greater than or equal to 0. That means x got to be greater than or equal to 2. And the starting point for this one, when x is 2, 2 gives me a 0. That gives me a 0, negative 0, 0. So I get 2, 4. So this square root function starts at 2, 4. So we'll start it at x is 2. And we got to go greater than 2, so we'll pick so I'm going to pick numbers that'll give me a perfect square. So if I take a 2, I get a 0. 0, opposite of 0, 0, so I get a 4. I put a 3 in, greater than 2. 3 minus 2 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. That's a negative 1 plus 4 is 3. Now I put a 4 in, I'll get root 2. So what I'm going to do is put a 6 in, because a 6 gives me a 4, which is a perfect square. So a 6 going in gives me a 4. Square root of 4 is negative. Square root of 4 is 2. Negative of that is negative 2, plus 4 is 2. So we have 2, 4. X is 2. Y is 4, which is roughly right there. X is 3, y is 3, x is 3, y is 3, which is right there. X is 6, y is 2, x is 6, y is 2. So there's the, just go through this point. So there it is, going there. Just, so 3, 3, okay. Draw an arrowhead on that. There's going. There it is. Now, the domain, we figured it out to be, the x is going to the right of 2, so x is greater than or equal to 2. And the range, in terms of 4, the range is going, notice this is negative, starting off at 4, but it's negative, so it's going down. So the range is y is less than or equal to 4. So let's work out his inverse. The f of x equals the negative root of x minus 2 plus 4. Change the f of x to a y. Change the y to an x and an x to a y, because we're reflecting in the line y equals x. There's the line y equals x right there. So we're reflecting in this line. So that's why we're switching. Now, the plus 4 becomes a minus 4 on the left side. And we have to multiply by a negative 1. So that's a negative x plus 4 equals the square root of y minus 2. So negative 1 times x, negative x. Negative 1 times 4 is 4. Negative times negative is positive. Now that we have the square root, we will square both sides. So we have the square root of y minus 2 squared is y minus 2. And we have negative x plus 4 squared. But negative x can be, the negative can be factored out to make this. So negative x plus 4 is the same as the negative of x minus 4. So now when we square that, negative times the negative is a positive, and that gives me x minus 4. So the negative of x plus 4 is the same as x minus 4 when we're squaring it. So this becomes y is equal to x minus 4 squared plus 2. Okay, so the f of x, f of negative 1 of x is x minus 4 squared plus 2. But we have to remember that your domain is the same as the range. Domain is x, the range is y. So the range is x is less than or equal to 4. And the range for the inverse is y is greater than or equal to 2. So based on that condition, this is a parabola, but we're only dealing with x is less than 4. Again, we got to do the inverse. So the inverse of the range is the domain. So we have to pick the values of x less than or equal to 4. So that's a 4 and a 3 and a 2. So with a parabola, it makes no difference. I can pick, because of the square, I can pick any values of x, but I have to pick them at 4, 3, and 2, 1, 0, etc. So if I take a 4 and plug it in here, I get 0 squared is 0, I get a 2. If I take a 3 and plug it in, right here, I get a negative 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 2 is 3. If I put a 2 in, 2 minus 4 is negative 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. So what? Which just see if it makes sense. Up here I had 2, 3, 6 for the x, so that should be 2, 3, 6 for the y. 4, 3, 2 for the y should be 4, 3, 2 for the x. And what I'll do is plot this table. So x is 4, y is 2. So x is 4, y is 2. So that's right there. Okay. X is 3, y is 3. That's right there. And x is 2, y is 6. So there it is there. And so it moves this way. And I'm using the red to indicate its inverse. So this is f to the negative 1 of x. So notice this is a parabola. Originally this is a parabola. So this parabola will go up from this point of 4, 2. Remember, the vertex of this parabola is, if it was the whole parabola you were thinking about, it would be 4, 2, but we're only thinking about the left side, less than 4. So it's on the left side. So the other part would have been here. So now we're dealing with the left side is in the inverse is starting at the point 2, 4, and it's going down. Just wanted to show you that. Again, the inverse. Again, the inverse. This is a linear underneath here. So the inverse of this square root function is a parabola because the expression underneath the root is linear. Okay. That brings us to the end of the video. If you like my video, click the like button, click the subscribe button. If you're not a subscriber, visit my math website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, my videos, and the content. That's the content that I have on the YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. It's just one word. Thank you for viewing my video. Hope the video helped you. Bye-bye.